Hello folks, Jamie here from the Classic Games team. We've got another devlog video for our game Orbital, an outer space endless survival arcade game, where you're a planetary pilot trying to prolong the inevitable grasp of a supermassive black hole, witnessing the collapse of the solar system. So it's a really intense galactic battle. And of course, to get players ready for this galactic battle, we needed to have a really good onboarding, a really good tutorial to explain how to actually play the game itself. Now, we're going to walk through our development process of the tutorial and one things that we've learned during our analytics, our player feedback, and of course, just experiencing it ourselves as developers. So, the first thing that you're looking at right now is the very old first iteration of the tutorial. We had a 2-minute narration of a professional voice actor being very energetic, very thematic, and explaining the lore and the concept of the game and how to play it, what to look out for. And we thought this would be really cool because it gets the player in the mood of the game. Boy, were we wrong. From all of our data, people wanted to skip the tutorial, they weren't listening, they weren't engaged, and they actually made a lot of mistakes after the tutorial in the game itself, showing that they didn't learn anything. Now, this is 100% our fault. We're idiotic to do this way, but we've learned from our mistakes and we've got our second iteration of the tutorial. So we went back to the design board and we made something completely new. Whenever the player jumps into the game, they're greeted with a tutorial that slows down the actual game itself. There's no pausing time. There's no sitting through narrations and having to click on things and read panels. We wanted the game to be fluid and dynamic. So what we've done is, while the player is playing the game at a reduced difficulty and an easier climb, to the left is a checklist of what the player is currently learning in the game. And below that is a little hint panel just to explain a little bit more about that specific thing they're trying to learn. And we put a nice little glowing box around this information to try and grab the attention of the player. This original idea worked quite well, but what we noticed was there was players dying a lot more to the black hole and the asteroids, and we asked ourselves, why is this? And through player analysis and just outright talking to people and doing our internal playtesting, the light bulb moment happened. We were asking players to focus on the black hole, on their planet, on the obstacles in the area, and look to the left, to the UI, read and understand. You can't do both. Simple as that. Players were getting frustrated, constantly dying, not knowing what to do, and we knew something had to change. We had to reduce this drop-off rate. Players were just quite frankly confused on what to do because they didn't have a moment to breathe and understand what it is they're trying to learn. And ultimately, we found that there's a big drop-off in the tutorial, particularly around phase in which the asteroids are introduced to the player. The players were able to control the planet quite easily. It's quite a familiar gameplay mechanic to use the spacebar, but what we noticed is whenever the player was first introduced to asteroids and they had to be a bit more technical with their movement, there was a huge drop-off rate. And this is because players were having to try and dodge the asteroids and look at the information on the left. This wasn't great. We were trying to ask the player to pay attention to their planet, dodge these asteroids, but also learn and read on the left. It just wasn't computing. So for this here phase, we noticed the players finding it difficult to get past the asteroids. Now, we as developers, we're familiar with Game Orbital. It's quite easy for us, and that is where our downfall came. We're noticing that players are dying to the asteroids, so we need to fix this. And it's quite a simple fix. We've just increased the delay, the distance, between each asteroid, giving players that ability to scoot through the asteroids and feel a bit more comfortable and confident that they actually understand how to play this game. By simply increasing that gap, we heavily reduced the drop-off in the tutorial. Towards the end of the tutorial, we're starting to teach the player about the satellites. Every unique planet has 3 technologies which are used to destroy asteroids, protect the planet, increase its speed, a mixture of defense, attack, and utilities. And now to recharge these abilities, these technologies, you have to collect satellites. So this is what we were teaching in the tutorial. The satellites are color-coded towards your planet's technology to make it easier to differentiate between which satellite you need to pick up to rejuvenate the ammo of that technology. The issue with this phase was it was very boring. There was a long delay between whenever the phase started and the first satellite was collected. 20 seconds. All right, 20 seconds is way too long for the player to be sitting there and doing nothing. And we noticed a small drop-off rate, and we attributed to this delay in getting to the action. To fix this, all we had to do was decrease that time in which it took for a satellite to come from the outer orbit into the inner orbit. This allowed players to stay active and keep engaging in the game and make it a little bit more seamless between phase and phase. Originally, we also had the player have to collect a specific number of each color of a satellite. It was 3 of each, but this wasn't indicated anywhere. And we had some instances where the player was stuck on this phase for 2-3 minutes trying to collect all the satellites, but they weren't able to collect 3 of the same color. So we removed this and we just said, okay, 3 satellites there needed to be collected of any color. This new phase for the satellites flowed immensely better, and it was a lot more seamless and shown the actual gameplay that the player will experience in the main game itself. At the end of the tutorial, we originally stopped. We originally had a UI panel that would pop up and it would allow the player to go back to the menu or to play the game. Here we've seen a drop off once again. A lot of people will go back to the menu and they may return, they may not return. But we knew we had to keep that player engaged and hook them into the actual gameplay loop and use all of the skills that they've just learned. So we remove this break and we instantly throw the player into the game after a small countdown timer, just to give that player a little bit of time to relax, debrief themselves and prepare for the onslaught. The final iteration of the tutorial is what we have now. Collecting all of our analytics, analysing the player funnel and looking at our playtest, people did improve from the first iteration to the second. Well, of course, rather than sitting there for a 2-minute narration, they're actually playing the game. But there was still a drop-off. Some players were getting confused still of what to do, and they felt a little bit too panicked and to get the correct answer. Finally, we have the full current state of the tutorial. There's new UI, new effects, everything's fleshed out a little bit more, some more juice. The main addition to the third iteration of the tutorial is the time freeze aspect. When players are given their next task of the checklist to work through, the tutorial freezes the game for a little bit of time, just to give players that little bit of breathing space to read what they have to do and feel comfortable going into the next phase. The panel slides out from the left to be straight in the middle of the screen, so it's the only focal point. This completely removed the issue of players missing the task as they're desperately trying to survive the onslaught. Now they could read the panel, understand the panel, and move at their own pace once they understood what to do. Overall, on our third and final iteration of this tutorial, the average player death count has dropped significantly. More players going straight to the game after the tutorial. There's less confusion in the tutorial, and overall it just looks better. There's a lot more juice, a lot more visual prowess, and it really does the game proud. So folks, that's everything for the onboarding and the tutorial devlog we've got for Orbital. If this is the type of video that you like, seeing a little bit more behind the scenes of what we're doing, stay tuned, let us know, because we've got a couple of more devlogs coming soon.